Happy New Year, friends, and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where three of your friendly Pro Tools experts and avid instructors discuss, demonstrate, and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in the official Avid Facebook support forum. I'm your host, Dave Phillips, audio engineer and lecturer for Point Blank in the UK, and on today's episode, we're tackling a question about managing output faders through automation from Mike, who asks this. Can someone please answer this? Oh, well, here we are. If you have a lot of tracks running, some with automation and some without, is there a way that you can reduce all of the channel levels and reduce the automation at the same time? I know that you can select all channels, but it leaves the automation in place at the original level in those tracks. So, interesting question. An important one, I think, that blights everybody who doesn't quite get how the automation system works and how we can manage our own automation. But with me, as ever, are my two master buddies who are as trim as they come. Spoiler. Send love and presents out to Anders Mott at Tonkrafwerk in Austria.
Hey.
And to Andy Hageman, Avid's audio curriculum manager over in Tokyo. Hi, Andy.
Hello, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to you. Best way to spend a New Year's Day, don't you think?
Yep, totally.
It is a way to spend New Year's.
Before I start, I want to give a shout out and a Happy New Year to our Patreon supporters who support us every month. Many thanks to Don, Mike, Matthew, Gregor, Eric, and Kenny, and Anders. I said Mike.
Yep.
Mike's in there.
Yeah, you did last week as well. I'm really sorry.
As always, we're very grateful for your support. Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you guys. We're so glad you're with us. Thank you so much. And if you would like to support our work on Pro Tools Answers, you can head over to patreon.com/Pro Tools Answers. You can select a manageable tier over there. And if you wanted to make just a one-time donation to the channel, if you're enjoying what we're doing, hours and hours and hours worth of answers and content and advanced workflows and things on our channel. If you fancy donating and helping us towards that, you can head over to protoolsanswers.com. You can make a one-time donation through PayPal there. So let's dive into Mike's question. Can I set this up? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Or have you guys got some stuff?
The best guy to set this up.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's very nice of you, Anders. Thank you. Opinions.
Anders is turning over a new leaf in this new year.
Yeah, this is my New Year's resolution. I will not be a dick.
I think that's a very good place for us all to start. We can all learn from Anders on that one.
I wonder how long it will last.
Okay, so let's have a look at just a couple of tracks on my session here. So I've got a left and a right a distortion guitar track that's got a little bit of automation programmed in there, and also we've got some automation programmed in there. And on this lead guitar track, there's no automation programmed in here. Now, what happens is, and obviously the problem that Mike is having is, if I go and do a little bit of movements on my channel faders, we can see that everything moves initially.
You're using the all group now, right?
I'm activating the all group so that when I move one thing, everything else is supposed to move with it. So I'm moving the one track that doesn't have the automation on, but the moment that I hit play, everything that has automation on it will jump back to its natural automation points. But the tracks that don't have automation on it obviously will stay where they are, because that's what you essentially want to happen, isn't it? The automation locks those faders into where you've programmed that automation into, because that's what you wanted to happen. But the downside is that everything you kind of want it all to stay together, because that's what you've done with your mixing and your automation. But when you're trying to move tracks that don't have any automation programmed into, those relationships end up changing. So your mix ends up changing. So how are we going to get around this? Because what Mike wants to do is he obviously wants to adjust his level a amidst all of this automation that he's programmed to his track. But actually, one thing that Mike doesn't discuss in his question is, does he want? He says he wants to move everything up, but is that for the purposes of everything in a group? So I've got everything in a drum group here. Do we want to just turn up everything in the drum group so that it's pumping more energy into the subgroup itself, or does he want to turn up the entire track so that it's pumping more energy into his 2 bus?
Because if that's the case, I mean, one way to make your entire mix 3 dBs louder or something would be to turn up the master 3 dB, right? That would be the fastest version of this in any case, if that's the goal.
Well, that would technically be your output level if you're talking the master. Just the output going to speakers. But if he wants to turn up the signal going into his 2 bus, which is right here, I've got my mix trim here that will control the level of the signal going into my mix bus. So there's always nuances to these questions.
It comes down to as all things mixing essentially comes down to signal flow. So working backwards, probably the simplest thing, if you wanted to take your whole mix and change it up or down or whatever, then you take your mix trim, which, by the way, Dave, I love that. I love the fact that you have a mix trim going into your aux track, which is your mix 2 bus, and then your master fader is your door out of the system. That's awesome. That's fantastic. I love it. And that's one way to do it. That's a super easy way to do it.
So what other options does Mike have?
Well, I think we start with the Pro Tools Ultimate obvious one.
Sure.
Is and so a lot of the comments that were included in that thing were trim automation, and kind of I think we naturally gravitate towards trim automation because what trim automation will allow us to do is, if I go and find those 2 tracks that I was working on that do have my automation on, which is definitely those 2, I'll select trim automation as one of my automation modes, and because these are linked, they'll stay together. My faders turn yellow. We can see that it's in trim automation mode. And now I can move up the faders. I can hit play. My faders will stay where they are. And if we flick over to and have a look at the volume automation, we can see that we've got a couple of extra lines appear on our automation lane. I've just turned that off and we'll reset it again. We can see we've got our single automation lane there. Shows us our volume levels. Now when we turn on the trim automation, we get this yellow line here, which indicates that trim automation is active and it's basically set at 0 unity gain. So there's no boost, there's no cut to the trim level. But when we start to move that up, we move our fader. So I'm going to give a 3 dB boost to my entire channel. We can see that my trim automation level has boosted by the 3 dB increase that I wanted. And we've got this blue line that has appeared. And if we zoom into that and I haven't got zoom activated on my OS X, that's typical. I'll give it a little bit more of a boost. Let's move it all the way up to separate these out properly. We have this blue line here, which is essentially the resultant of my output level increase. So you can see that the blue line follows the curve of my original automation. It's been boosted by the 12 dB, and we can see the yellow trim line has gone all the way up to the top to indicate the most amount. And the blue line is the resultant automation, the resultant volume level as a result of that volume boost. Now that's only going to be doing it for 1 track, right? And Mike obviously wants to be able to move everything. So what we need to do in this case is we'll Alt or Option click on a track plate to select everything. We'll stick everything with Shift Alt do tool selected, put everything into a trim automation mode, and then let's say we want to move everything up by let's see 5 dB. Everything's going to go with it, right? Sorry, I'll just roll back. I needed to put the all group on in order for that movement to happen. So let me just shift that up by 5 dB, and then everything should be going up. Everything should be going up with it. Did everything go up with it, or am I wrong?
Can you turn all of your clips into volume?
Sorry, I can. I can see that everything's gone up by 4.8 dB. So
now, even the tracks that have no automation on them.
Mm-hmm. Even the tracks that have no automation on them. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So everything is moving up by 4.8 dB. And at that point, you could just continue and continue working on with everything at that level. Or I'll hold down Alt-Shift. We could live in a perpetual state of trim automation, but we really don't want to do that. I'm going to hold down Alt-Shift. I'm going to head to Coalesce Trim Automation, and that's going to basically write the change that I've just made to all of the tracks that are selected, which are all of them. So that would be that's standard way to do it.
That's a perfect way to do it, right? So that's cool. By the way, I know a lot of people will reflexively coalesce. There's no technical reason that you have to. Not if you open it up, if you are using Pro Tools Ultimate, you can leave it in trim mode until you bounce your session and through it. You can save your session like that and never coalesce. That's not a problem. But I know a lot of people do it just to kind of keep things clean and also to reset that that gold line so that you can trim it again. Now, from a signal flow perspective, that is changing the level of the automation of the tracks. So that's not going to affect the level of the signal hitting the processors that are on the tracks, but it could affect, well, it will affect the levels of the signals hitting the aux tracks and subgroups, and you've also brought up the subgroups. So you could wind up having 2 dB be actually more than a 2 dB resultant change depending upon how you have things going.
Yeah, exactly. Because the all group is everything, isn't it?
Is everything.
It's everything that's been selected. So if you've got subgroups,
everything.
If you've got subgroups selected as part of that, then as Andy said, the subgroups are going to go up. So you're going to get a 4.8 times 2 boost in some cases.
But on the other hand, this was the exact question that Mike asked. So actually, he asked about all of the tracks in his session, and that's what he got. So using trim automation, great workflow. And I love those golden faders. It's one of I really love the looks of that. But I mean, what's the situation if he isn't on Ultimate? Because the trim automation is an Ultimate feature. How could we do this some other way?
It is. And funnily enough, trim automation, which is done on a track-by-track basis, is Pro Tools Ultimate. But VCA faders, which does trim automation on multiple tracks, is available for everybody. So I've got a session here. I can share this.
And we've talked about VCA automation before, and we all love VCA. So if you haven't checked that episode out, maybe have a look in the description below. We'll put the link to it. Or won't we, Dave? I will.
We'll try and remember.
But this workflow is great.
So let's take a look at this session. I've got these different tracks. They are part of the drum group. Now, I could create a group that has all of my tracks. You'll see why I couldn't use the all group, and you'll see why in just a second. But you could create a group that has as many or as few tracks as you want. Then I create a VCA track, and the output of that VCA track in the output tab, you choose the group that you want to control. Now, notice that the all group is not available, right? So if you wanted to do this to all your tracks, you would have to actually manually create a group that encompasses all your tracks.
And it makes total sense, sorry to interrupt, Andy, because even the VCA track is included in the all group, so it couldn't control itself doing that.
It would just keep on going up and then... Anyways, so there's a logical reason why that wouldn't be able to happen. But I've got my drum groups here, so I've got my VCA track controlling this. Now, notice that here, and I've made this kind of a worst case scenario. All of these tracks have automation on them, except for the hat track. And even to make things just even a little bit more interesting, I've actually turned the automation mode to off. So not only does it not have automation on it, but even if it did have automation on, it wouldn't be able to follow. And I'll go into the edit window here. So I've got the edit window, and you can see all my different automation curves that I have for each one. And you can see on the hat track, I've got nothing. Okay. I'll open up the output window, just because I don't want to go back to the mix window. And are we going up or down by 2 dB?
Going up.
Okay, so we'll go up by 2 dB. Zoop. Let's see. Zoop.
And by the way, Andy is now holding Command on his Mac or Control on the PC. Will get you fine trim of volumes when you're turning a knob.
And you can barely see it because it's so close. I'm going to go a little bit more extreme. Okay. Now you can see here that it's made a change to all of the different tracks, exactly how Dave showed it with with trim mode. This is the same as trim mode. It's just a different way of doing it. And you'll notice also that it's done the same thing on the track that has no automation and isn't even reading automation. If you take a look back in the mix window, you'll see that it changes all the tracks and it just scales all of them to whatever you want them to be. So, and this is something that you have in Pro Tools. Whoops. You have this in Pro Tools Standard. It's super easy to use. It is non-destructive, and if you want to, you can go here to tracks, and you can. Where the heck is it?
It's in Edit Automation Coalesce. Yeah.
Where is it?
Isn't it?
It's track. Track.
Is it in track? Okay, sorry. No, it's in Edit Automation Coalesce, isn't it?
Edit Automation is not
Coalesce.
in Pro Tools
it's
Standard.
in track. Sorry, it's Coalesce in track.
It's a track-based command, right?
Sorry about that.
Where I'm not even seeing it here in my.
I'm not either.
Oh, maybe in Pro Tools Standard you can't coalesce a VCA track.
Are you in standard then?
I'm in standard today because I'm writing a book on standard, so I'm in standard today.
Okay, I can show it. I can show it if you want to.
But I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to. And I wonder, I should know this, but if I delete this track, will it ask me if I want to coalesce? Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
So there you go. I kind of knew the answer to this, but I wasn't 100% sure. But even though you can't manually coalesce it, let me go ahead and. I can't undo what I just did I?
Because it's a delete track option, isn't it? So yeah, you'd have to revert.
Because I'm an idiot. Let me go back to this. I want to see if just check one super last thing.
Well, it's not idiocy because it's the only way to describe what happens to be able to coalesce VCA automation on
so
standard.
I've got that. I wonder if I right click on here, is it going to? Yes. Okay. There we go. Okay. There we go. That's where it is.
Great.
So we don't have it in the tracks list or the edit automation menu because in Pro Tools Standard you don't have an edit automation menu, but you can coalesce your VCA by right clicking on the track there. There we go.
And that will coalesce all of the individual tracks just like we did with trim automation.
Exactly right, but it'll do it on just these tracks. So we'll see right now. You'll see that if I coalesce this, then the fader on the VCA track goes back to Unity, and these tracks, their new automation is just now that bumped up, and I could go ahead and I could trim it down. You know, and I haven't lost anything.
So let's point.
Andy, can I check something for me really quick? Can you,
sure.
with the VCA track selected, can you go into tracks menu again? No, it's totally not. Yeah,
it's not there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that you don't have in Pro Tools Ultimate or in Pro Tools Standard that you do in Pro Tools Ultimate.
It's
this
fantastic.
is one of
you
them.
could still coalesce it from right click menu. Great.
So let's point out what just one other difference is that you don't have to have the tracks selected to coalesce them just like we did with trim. This is whatever's connected to the drum VCA.
So you don't have to have all the tracks selected, and the group that you are using doesn't even have to be an active group. So the drum group is not an active group; it's an inactive group at this point. So all that drum group really is functioning as is an organizational tool for my VCA track.
Yes.
Yeah, so just to run it down here, if you want to do this, like in Mike's scenario, select all of your tracks, group them, Command G on a Mac or Control G on a PC, and group them. Don't even bother to turn this group on, right? Or you could, and then create a VCA track to control that group. Just turn up the volume to dBs, and then you could basically delete the VCA track again to automatically coalesce everything into the to the volume graphs, and that's your session returned to its normal state without anything added, right?
Completely right. And not to be too much of a jerk on this, but he said he wanted to do all the tracks. He may find that if you bring up all your tracks to do 2 dB plus all the subgroups 2 dB, that might be more than he was actually expecting. And one of the nice things about VCAs is that you can choose which are the members of the group that you want to adjust up and down, and it gives you a little bit of flexibility there.
So let's have a very quick look at that then, because we have to then think a little bit deeper about what we actually want to increase.
That's right.
But this is really depending on how you structure your mixes, right?
Yes, it
and
really
some
does.
Some mixes are fairly complex, whereas other mixes are really straightforward.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't even use a master at this stage in his session, right?
Yeah. So let's look at
any subgrouping.
Let's look at a relatively complex one, because I've got all of my drums grouped into this folder track here. Yep. Actually, is this just a folder track?
Basic folder. Yep.
So yeah, we've got all of these drum tracks running through this routing folder there. So that's essentially our AUX, our subgroup, and everything else I think is running directly to my mix 2 bus. Nothing else is subgrouped, apart from every individual instrument has its own subgroup at the end of the session. Again, this is another way that you could just mix. You could route all of the BVs, the drums, to another subgroup, and then you can just mix with the subgroup. So that would be another way around it potentially. Yep. But we need to make selections of specific members of the group if we're going to be changing our automation. We need to select that one, 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 that one. I'm holding down Command to do this on a Mac. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. That
would be Control on your PC.
Oh, actually,
PC guy.
Yep. So let me just roll back that again, because all my BVs are subgrouped. So let's just ignore all of the BVs. All of my effects I want to go as well. I'm going to ignore all of those subgroups there. I'm going to ignore all of the mixy stuff, and then Command G. So that has selected everything that I want to change. So that's brought those into a single group, and now I can create myself a VCA. Just call that change. And now let's see if I can get as many faders on screen as I can. So this is to change, connect it to my change group, and now that's only going to be changing the tracks going to the 2 bus and the subgroups that are going to the 2 bus. All of the member tracks for the subgroups are going to remain unchanged, and that's important. So yeah.
So basically we've had a number of possible solutions here. What solution would you personally go for, Dave?
Me personally, I use trim automation a lot. I tend to subgroup a lot. So what I might end up doing is, let's have a look very quickly at.
So you'd probably go for trim, and Andy, what would you go for? Probably.
I try to keep as much control over each individual part of my signal flow as possible. So in every single one of my subgroups, I have a VCA and a master fader feeding that subgroup. So I can basically change the level of the signal at any place, and that's in all of my templates. I've got that on all of them, and I find that it's very useful for me to mix with VCA tracks, because it allows me to really get to keep my balance the same, but get it to hit my subgroups dynamic processing in the sweet spot. So I use VCAs all the time.
Yeah, I'd probably also go for VCAs, but it comes down to the kind of session that I'm working on.
Yeah, completely.
Of course, yeah. And we tend to like have a view of things also from a musical standpoint a lot of times. And I think a lot of people also in the Facebook group have like their own personal view on how to solve a problem, always thinking from their own perspective. But remember, like in post-production or if you're doing a podcast or a radio show or something, you might not have this complex routing because of how the session will work. So VCA, I probably go for a VCA.
Yeah.
But all these, I mean, there's no wrong answer here. It really comes down to the important thing for this, as with many things in Pro Tools, is not really to plant your flag in the sand and say, this is the only way that I do this, but to understand all the different ways to do that, so that with anything that comes to you from any direction, you can choose the situation that works best for you at the time.
I think you put you put it so well, Andy, and there are so many functions in Pro Tools that are similar to each other, but all have their own specific user case. And the more tools that you are efficient with, the better you're going to solve any problem.
Wise words,
Indeed.
Thank you, Andy.
from me.
That's why we pay him the medium-sized bucks, Anders.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm paid in coffee.
Well, we hope that was useful, guys. A couple of ways of being able to manage your output faders through automation. Let us know in the comments what your preferred method is, or anything different that you do that we didn't discuss. It's all interesting. People read the comments, so they're going to be picking up your advice, our advice, and pick whichever one works for the specific situation or your favored workflow, or maybe even the version of the software that you're working on. So if you haven't yet done so, hit like on the video. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Hit the bell icon so you get notified of all of the videos that we release on a weekly basis. You can head over to protoolsanswers.com. You can subscribe over there. Andy will remind you every week what we're up to and what we're releasing. You can pick up some Pro Tools Answers swag over at protoolsanswers.com as well, including these beautiful things. We love these. No idea. We just love these so much.
It's favorite shirt ever.
Yep, indeed. And if you are able to see your way to support Pro Tools Answers, you can do so at patreon.com/Pro Tools Answers, and you can also drop us one-time donations at protoolsanswers.com as well via PayPal. So all it leaves me to say is thank you very much to the beautiful guy Anders.
Thank you, Dave.
The beautiful guy Andy.
You're very welcome.
We're all beautiful, baby. My name's Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers. Happy New Year, and we're out.